I think one of the major storylines that we have seen throughout this season, and particularly throughout this playoff run, something you've talked about a lot, is the obvious decline of James Harden, where he's averaging under 19 a game in these playoffs on 40% shooting. It was a subpar finish to the regular season. He hasn't scored more than 22 points in since March 29th. That's over a month of basketball, which is crazy for a guy who averaged 35 a game in consecutive seasons. So, another underwhelming performance tonight. Jason, is James Harden just cooked?
You know, it's hard to say because there is the hamstring element in this.
Yeah.
But the hamstring element feels like it's been around for years now. You know, this is the thing. I saw an article that showed up on, that like Twitter Discover page that I scroll through sometimes, and in it, it was just like a health-based article, and it was talking about like the difference between your chronological age and your biological age. Essentially, the difference between you aging simply on the calendar versus like wear and tear. Not just physically in terms of like joint injuries and things like that, but like how much time do you spend absorbing UV rays? Like how much alcohol do you consume? How many other drugs do you consume? Like what kind of food do you eat? Like how do you take care of in terms of like your cholesterol, your blood pressure, and all those things? Like you age in different ways. And there was a definitive thing that happened, a definitive moment in Chris Paul's career. I think juxtaposing Chris and James is super interesting because they have personal beef. But like, Chris Paul, he pulls his hamstring in one of the most pivotal moments of his basketball career, right? And it costs him. Well, there's no guarantee that Golden State doesn't come out and win those last two games. I hate when people talk in guarantees. There's no guarantee that the Warriors win Game 5 if Draymond plays in the 2016 finals. There's no guarantee that the Rockets lose in 2018 or win in 2018 based on a Chris Paul injury. You still have to play the games. The games are different based on who's on the floor. But Chris Paul, had he won that series, they would have beat the Cavs if he was healthy. He would be a champion right now. Well, after that year, there was a very well documented change in Chris Paul's approach to his own health. Because from 2012 to 2018, it was frequent that Chris Paul dealt with injuries at a bunch of different points in playoff series that cost him chances, right? And so he becomes a vegan. There was a bunch of consistent video footage that he would do additional workouts after games to continue to strengthen his conditioning, right? And what do you know? Like the dude he broke his hand during the regular season this year, but that's an impact injury. The dude's been available in all the big moments since then, because it's not rocket science. Like you get what you put in, what you get out of your body is what you put into your body. You have to take care of it. You only get one of them, right? We juxtapose that with James Harden, who is literally so famous for attending strip clubs that at one point there was a viral chart that went out where someone juxtaposed his stats with the cities that he would play in based on their like Zagat guide strip clubs. and there was like a clear line that showed that he would play better when he played in cities that had more strip clubs. And obviously that's a joke, and that's probably just coincidental. But the point is James Harden hasn't taken good care of his body. And the wild thing is we tweeted out, the Volume tweeted out our little rant the other night about the last time we juxtaposed these two guys with each other, and someone that I follow actually commented underneath it and was complaining like it's unfair for you to jump on James now that he's on the decline, like you're forgetting about how good he was at his peak. And I wanted to be like, he's 32. Yeah. He's 32 years old. Like, dude, he is in the prime of his career. There is absolutely no excuse for him to have declined this far. He has not suffered a torn ACL. He has not suffered a torn Achilles. He's had soft tissue issues. There's soft tissue issues typically come down to conditioning and that kind of stuff anyway, right? So it's like there's just absolutely no excuse for James Harden to have declined as much as he had. Literally in this playoff run, he's averaging 18.8 points, 5.4 rebounds, 9.4 assists on 40% shooting, 35% from the field, 89% from the free throw line. He's obviously still good there. He just can't get there nearly as frequently as he used to. It's just this, we're not talking about a max contract play anymore. We're not even talking about a star anymore. Let's cut the shit, guys. He's a lot closer to D'Angelo Russell than he is to Luka Doncic at this point. That's the reality of the James Harden problem at this point. we talked a lot about a couple weeks ago about what the Sixers should do with them after this playoff run. Like, do you max him or do you not? And don't get me wrong, I still think you got to try to find a way to keep him for the sake of the asset. But like, we're dangerously near the territory of like, is any of the 30 teams in the league going to offer this guy a max contract for a D'Angelo Russell type of player? I mean, again, he's better than D'Angelo Russell. I'm just saying he's closer to that than he is to the stars at the top of the league. It's a real problem, and I don't know what you do at this point. But like, you when you're pointing the finger, you point the finger at James. He didn't take care of his body. He aged himself way faster than athletes normally do. He's the Allen Iverson of this era, and this is the kind of thing that happens when you do that.
It is remarkable. I mean, just when you put into context that it was literally 2 years ago that he averaged 34 a game, and a year before that he averaged 36 a game. And I think obviously you've touched on a lot of it, but it really is obvious, the physical deterioration. And hamstring or not, he just doesn't separate. And obviously his game has never been explosiveness. It's always been change in pace and those little bursts of acceleration and deception and craftiness. But I mean, outside of the step back three, it's tough for him to create a clean look for himself. In the paint, it feels like everything is tough. And as you've said, I mean, he's just not getting there as much. So it's obviously a major problem. And when he can't step up and assert himself like that, when Embiid isn't even out there, it kind of leaves this Sixers team just in a brutal spot. I think the D'Lo comment is interesting. I want to play a little game within the game here for you and just throw out some guys. And you tell me if right now you would rather have them or James Harden. Let's start with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Would you rather have him or James Harden?
Oh, gosh. I think I'd still go with James Harden there just because we don't know what Shai looks like we do know what he looks like in a playoff environment. He was not great in the bubble. But like in terms of, and I still value playmaking a great deal. The one thing that James Harden does still bring to the table at this point is like he's in that tier of playmakers right below the top, and there is a great deal of value in that specifically. It's just you can't have your team built around him as an offensive fulcrum anymore, but you can't do that with Shai either. So like in terms of building my franchise around him, like I'd take Shai, but like if I had to pick a guy for a playoff series tomorrow, I'd still take James.
Okay. What about CJ McCollum or James Harden?
Oh, that's a lot closer.
You had to go to your Zen place there for a moment.
Yeah, I think I'd go CJ, but it's very close. I think CJ's a little bit better defensively at this point because James is still he's still just all over the place on the defensive end of the floor. That 3-level scoring, I think, is something you can still lean because I'm accepting the reality that at this point, neither of those guys are a number one. But I think if I had a good number one, I'd rather have CJ as my number two than James as my number two.
Okay, last one. I think that you've probably already given away your answer based on the CJ one, but you did have some gripes with this guy in the last series. Donovan Mitchell or James Harden?
Oh, James Harden, easily. Donovan Mitchell.
Oh, interesting.
The thing, I think Donovan Mitchell his decision making is so poor as an offensive fulcrum. When you combine that with his defensive issues, and then the fact that his jump shot is so streaky, I think Donovan Mitchell is having a wake up call this year, and I expect him to have some sort of significant improvement in the coming years. But if I was picking a guy for a playoff series tomorrow, I'd rather have James because at least I can trust James to at least organize guys and put people in the right spots, if that makes sense.